Did anybody find Hebrews 10:23? Yes.
Let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised.
Amen. Thank you. If you'll turn to our devotional thoughts, Summertime with God. That sounds good, doesn't it? This lovely morning, all nature appears fresh and beautiful. Earth has put on her summer robes of green and is smiling in almost Edenic loveliness. I think our enjoyment of the summertime is heightened by the memory of the long, cold months of winter. And on the other hand, the hope of summer helps us to endure more cheerfully the winter's rains. If we were to permit our minds to dwell upon the barrenness and desolation with which the ice king surrounds us, we might be very unhappy. But being wiser than this, we look forward in anticipation to the coming springtime, which is to bring back the birds, awaken the sleeping flowers, clothe the earth in her robes of green, and fill the air with light and fragrance and song. The Christian sojourn in this world may be fitly compared to the long, cold winter. Here we experience trials, sorrows, and disappointments, but we should not permit our minds to dwell upon these. Let us rather look forward with hope and faith to the coming summer, when we shall be welcomed to our Eden home, where all is light and joy, where all is peace and love. Had the Christian never experienced the storms of affliction in this world, had his heart never been chilled by disappointment or oppressed by fear, he would scarcely know how to appreciate that. We will not be despondent, though often weary, sad, and heartsick. The winter will not always last. The summer of peace, joy, and eternal gladness soon will come. Then Christ will dwell with us and lead us to fountains of living waters, and will wipe all tears from our eyes. Let nothing hinder you from making thorough work for eternity. There will be no chilling winds, no wintry colds, but an eternal summer. There is light for the intellect, love that is abiding, sincere. There will be health and immortality, vigor for every faculty. There will be shut out forever every sorrow and every grief.
Amen.
We want to be there for that, don't we? It kind of reminds me of our sermon last week from Anthony. He talked about the winter and the summer. It was beautiful. I loved it.
It is winter, if you haven't noticed. Although today it's above freezing, so there's water dripping and melting, and I think it was about a week ago I said, do you realize we're like 2 months away from March? And my wife said, you're starting to sound like Gail. But sometimes in winter, especially when it's 9 degrees below zero, it can make you start to long for a better place. Last winter we had 20 below and 20 or 30 mile an hour winds, if you remember. This winter we've had some cold weather, but a lot of sunshine, and the sunshine helps a lot. Sometimes I long for a better land. I came from Hawaii. My mother's in Florida. There are some good people down in Arkansas and other places that are warm. But there's even a better land that we can long for during the winter. Earlier this week, I was working on a project on the computer, and I started with this picture of a field. I couldn't tell if it was at sunrise or sunset, but the way that the light came across this field and there were flowers, it just created this beautiful yellow glow. And so I was building an image for a company, and I started to take pictures of animals, like a sheep, and I placed it in that beautiful pasture. And then I took a picture of a horse, and I put it there. And then I put a cow, and then on top of the horse's back, I put a little dog sitting on his back, and then a duck on the head of the sheep, and various animals, and they all started to come together, and they were just intermingled, and some sitting on top of it. Every large animal had small animals sitting on its back. And Sophia, my daughter, says, "That looks like heaven." And I wasn't even thinking that, but it did, and it just really made me happy to hear her say that. Christ has assured his disciples that he went to prepare mansions for them in his Father's house. And yet, even as beautiful as that image that I was creating was, I have not seen nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. That's 1 Corinthians 2:9. So during this winter, I want to take a step back and let's put our mind on the better land. I know of a land where there will be no more sickness. No sorrow, no pain, and no death. There, every power will be developed, every capability increased. This is the side of heaven that sometimes we don't think about. Sometimes we think of heaven as sort of this condition where we just get there and things are now the same. But actually, listen to this. Every power will be developed, every capability increased. The grandest enterprises will be carried forward. The loftiest aspirations will be reached. The highest ambitions realized. And still, there will arise new heights to surmount, new wonders to admire, new truths to comprehend. New truths to comprehend for all eternity. Fresh objects to call forth the powers of body, mind, and soul. By the way, I took that from a book called, it's a compilation. I didn't write down the original reference, but it's Heaven, page 152. There, all seek the interest and happiness of others. Through Christ alone can you make sure of heaven, where all is purity, holiness, peace, and blessedness, where there are glories that mortal lips cannot describe, including my own. I can't even tell you how great this place is going to be. Ellen White saw a bit of heaven, and I'm going to share just some highlights. You know, I've been working hard on my house. I know Gary's put an addition on his house. Some people don't like their house. They wish for a better house. Well, here's what Ellen White saw there. She said, "There I saw most beautiful houses that had appearance of silver, supported by 4 pillars set with pearls, most glorious to behold, which were to be inhabited by the saints." That's you and I if we choose it. The saints would then go out into the field, buy their houses, and she says this, to do something with the earth. She doesn't call it gardening or farming, but do something with it. She says, not as we have to do with the earth here, but it was just beautiful. A glorious light shone about their heads. The field was full of all kinds of flowers, and they will never fade. even when picked. The lion, the lamb, the leopard, and the wolf all together in perfect unity, which is probably why my daughter said that picture looked like heaven. Then they entered into the woods. I'm going to take a step away just for a second and tell you a little bit of a story. I'm very good friends with some of the teachers at the academy here. And some of them that have been teachers for a long time told me a story. They have this campus family situation where some of the children get assigned to them, and then once a quarter or once a semester they come over to their house. Well, their house is backed up to the woods. So they had these, early in the year, they had these students over, and they, as an activity, they had a meal and decided to go for a walk in the woods. Well, they get a ways into the woods to where they can no longer see the way out, and a young man starts crying. He was so scared. He'd never been in the woods before. He was from the city. And he got so scared of the woods that he was crying and started to panic. He had only seen the woods in movies and other things, which made it seem very dark. But even Ellen White says, then they entered the woods, not like the dark woods we have here, but they were light and beautiful. That young man will not be crying in those woods. We will dwell, in fact, she said that they all cried out, we will dwell safely in the wilderness. And I'm going to say this, even at the risk that maybe you don't like camping here, because it might be cold and wet and damp and those things. But she says, we will dwell safely in the wilderness and sleep in the woods. It'll be beautiful there. Mount Zion was just before us, and on the mount was a building which looked to me like a temple, and about it were 7 other mountains, on which grew roses and lilies. And I saw little ones. Those are children. And I saw little ones climb, or if they chose, use their little wings and fly to the top of the mountains and pluck the never-fading flowers.